I want to talk a little bit more about it with Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law School emeritus professor and author of Get Trump, The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. Alan, I think a lot of the American people, they've had a very small appetite for this story overall. It's been from the jump, so partisan. But this whistleblower information could be maybe the most explosive thing to happen this year. I mean, outside of the former president being indicted on criminal charges.
If it's true. Now, if it's true that the former president of the vice president of the United States, future president of the United States during that period of time, sat next to his son and heard his son essentially extort Chinese businessmen, that might be an impeachable offense, depending on whether you can impeach somebody for high crimes and misdemeanors that were committed when he was not president, but on the road to being president. That's an unresolved issue. But the constitutional criteria of high crimes and misdemeanors would be met by that kind of extortion and bribery if it could be proved to be true. Now, ironically, Congresswoman Bobart yesterday introduced articles of impeachment against Donald Trump that are clearly unconstitutional. They replicate exactly the articles of impeachment against President Trump during his first impeachment when I represented him. And I successfully argued to the Senate that you can't have abuse of power or obstruction of Congress, which are not in the constitutional, as criteria for impeachment. And yet Representative Robart has put those exactly in the articles of impeachment, almost precisely the same articles she voted against when it was Trump that was in the crosshairs. And so there's a little bit of hypocrisy on both sides here. And the irony is that it's conceivable that Biden could have committed impeachable offenses if this allegation against him of sitting next to his son proves to be true, and if you can impeach somebody for actions that took place before he became president. That's true. But these allegations made by Congressman Robart are hypocritical to the extreme and should be thrown out immediately. They are as unconstitutional as the articles that were unsuccessfully used against Donald Trump and that I successfully defended against.
Yeah, no doubt the reporting on this would be cautious. The Wall Street Journal putting this out. And House Republicans have been chomping at the bit to try to get to the bottom of the Hunter Biden laptop scandal and whether or not then Vice President Biden was involved in any bribery. But one of the whistleblowers, they testified that IRS investigators actually recommended charging Hunter Biden with tax evasion and with filing a false tax return, 2 felonies. So by pleading guilty to those 2 lesser tax charges, he essentially erases all of the higher consequences from some of the things the American people may not learn anything about until a further history lesson decades from now?
No, I think they can learn much more about it if congressional committees call Hunter Biden. He's probably not going to be able to plead the Fifth Amendment because his lawyers, excellent lawyers, by the way, who made a very good plea bargain for him, because his lawyers have said all investigations against him are over. His case is closed. If his case is closed and it's all over, he doesn't really have the right to plead the Fifth Amendment. So he can be asked about all these things by Congress. You know, we have a system of checks and balances, and Congress serves as a check on the abuses of executive authority by the IRS, by the Justice Department, indeed even by the White House. So I don't think we've heard the end of this. The plea bargain was fair if all Biden did was fail to send in his taxes on time and fail to put down his addiction on the application for a gun. But if, in fact, there was much more to it, if there were, in fact, felonies, real felonies, tax felonies that people indeed get indicted for and go to jail for, then that has to be looked into, as does the laptop, the Burisma, the allegation that there are 17 tapes. I want to hear those tapes. Every American has the right to know what was on those tapes.
But Alan,
the right to know whether or not, in fact, Hunter Biden was sitting next to Joe Biden when that conversation allegedly occurred.
What will happen next? Look into your crystal ball. Do you think that Congress will actually present this kind of a case and that we'll actually get more details about it? or will it be brushed under a rug somewhere? And what would need to happen in the next 30 days before he actually formally pleads guilty?
Yeah, well, I have a pretty good crystal ball. I've been right pretty much on all of my predictions. I predicted Hunter Biden would be indicted for these minor offenses. I predicted that President Trump would be indicted in the Florida case for obstruction of justice. So my crystal ball is pretty good. And my crystal ball is telling me that there will be congressional hearings and that there'll probably be some claims of privilege that will have to be litigated. But I think in the end, Hunter Biden's going to have to come clean.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.